Hey folks, sometimes you'll see a panel from a comic and it just doesn't seem to make sense without knowing the rest of the comics. Then there are some where you aren't sure it would make sense even if you did. Well, we're looking at one of the later sort of panels in this edition of the Four-Kolor Kitty. Greetings and welcome to another edition of Four-Kolor Kitty. This time our topic comes, once again, from longtime reader of the column version of this series, Austin. He sent me a panel of such oddity that he questioned whether it really came from a comic. Here it is. As you can see, it features a dinosaur in a cowboy outfit threatening a blue-hued individual with a spiked-in tail. What could this all mean? Well, I recognized it at once. It came from a limited series done back in November of 1985, and it featured the X-Men's Fuzzy Blue Elf and swashbuckling teleporter Kurt Wagner, aka Nightcrawler. So, how did Nightcrawler come to be facing this Texas Tyranno? Well, that's a long story. Let's begin with issue 1, which opens with Nightcrawler working out in the Danger Room, honing his acrobatic skills. From an observation area, Kitty, Shadowcat Pride, and her friend Ileana Magic Rasputin are watching. When Kurt takes a break, he tells the young ladies of a time when a teleporting foe and himself were dragged through a dimensional wormhole known as the Well at the Center of Time. Kitty, being the inquisitive young genius she is, attempts to create a simulation of the well, but somehow manages to actually summon the real thing. Before you know it, Kurt, along with Kitty's pet alien dragon called Lockheed, gets dragged into the vortex and disappears. I bet the two girls weren't looking forward to telling Professor Xavier about that. The two find themselves on a floating pirate galleon, where Kurt is identified as a boggy, which he doesn't much care for. Lockheed is no more pleased to be called a frumulous bandersnitch. However, Kurt decides to live out some childhood fantasies and join the crew. However, when the reality sets in that these pirates aren't like the ones in the movies, and when innocent lives are at stake, he changes sides and rescues, of course, a beautiful princess. After the royal barge docks, Kurt and his dragon friend decide to explore the city. Unfortunately, the pirates find him, and he is captured and sold to a shark-like sorcerer named Chagrin. Gee, how many times has that happened to you? Here you are, walking around a new city in another dimension, and you get sold into bondage to a shark. In the second issue, Nightcrawler and Lockheed are brought to Chagrin's floating citadel called London. Okay, I'll say it right now. The whole thing with the citadel being called London is so that they combine it with Nightcrawler being called a boggy, and make the pun for the title of this issue, A Boggy Day in London Town. You may groan now. Anyway, back to the story. The Sharky magic user slaps a device on Kurt to both analyze and neutralize his power of teleportation. He also kidnaps the princess for good measure. However, while imprisoned, Kurt meets the real boggies, who are bat-winged imps that have a passing resemblance to Nightcrawler. The boggies help Kurt escape, and he fights Chagrin. As he is fighting, the pirates also attack, but this time they are attacking the sorcerer. In the end, Kurt smashes Chagrin's magic staff, and as the evil wizard attempts to escape in his own sky galleon, Lockheed blasts him in the back with his flame breath, making him fall to his apparent doom. Because, if you see a wizard fall from a great height, you can be sure he's gone for good.
Back on Earth, Kitty and Ileana are trying to retrieve Kurt. Their first try just grabs Kurt's uniform, leaving him naked until Kitty quickly returns it. Their next attempt moves Kurt back into the well at the center of time. This time, he lands in a nice grassy field. Suddenly, a small blue creature, looking like a cartoon version of Kurt, appears and addresses him as Daddy.
Nightcrawler, I think your wild past has just caught up with you.
Seriously, though, issues 3 and 4 take place on a world that is a match for one described in an X-Men story called Kitty's Fairy Tale, where Kitty attempted to tell a fantasy story using her fellow X-Men as characters. The little blue fellow is a creature known as a Bamf, which is the sound Kurt makes when he teleports. He calls Nightcrawler Daddy Bamf, since he is taller than any of them. As he is taken to the Bamf's village, he is surprised to discover that evil, shark-faced wizard, Shagreen, is there and has captured a number of Bamfs.
He survived the fall. Color me surprised.
The remaining Bamf asks Kurt to save the captured Bamfs. Well, at least he does after Kurt informs him that Shagreen might sacrifice the girl Bamfs. He gains the help of this world's versions of Wolverine, an ill-tempered dwarf named Mean, Kitty, an older version named Pirate Kitty, Colossus, who is nearly identical, and Lockheed's larger counterpart for the rescue attempt. The band of heroes battles through several threats, including coming face-to-face with a hulking behemoth called Dark Bamf. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Kitty tries to teleport Kurt home again, but grabs a Bamf instead.
Seems the Bamfs have a similar bio reading to Kurt, so Kitty decides to lock into the largest signal.
This time, she gets Dark Bamf, who she quickly sends back.
She's having a bad day.
Unfortunately, in the meantime, our heroes get captured. All except for the little Bamf. With the assistance of the smaller version of Lockheed, he rescues some of the other Bamfs. This turns out to be the shapely female Bamfs, who seem very interested in Kurt. This makes him a bit uncomfortable. He thinks they look like his little sister. They are sure that love will find a way.
And thus were sparked lots of fanfics.
They break the evil wizard's new magic staff. Everything goes back to normal for the inhabitants of this world, and Kurt gets pulled back into the transdimensional vortex.
So, what has this got to do with the original panel? Well, after Nightcrawler is done helping out and saving the day,
he lands on yet another world, this time with the six-gun-toting dino. Kurt first tries to talk his way through it, but when all he can come up with is calling himself, well, a boggy, he decides to just deck the reptile. He then gets teleported to yet another world. I won't go into what happens there, but suffice it to say, Kurt finally gets help to go home.
And it's time for me to teleport on out. If you have a topic to suggest, a question to be answered, or just an odd comic panel, let me know. Until next time, this is Pastor Black for Four-Kolor Kitty, and I'll be seeing you in the funny pages.